Hi, everybody. We held the best panel for last, that's my view. No, just because I'm moderating, but I know these incredible folks. So I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Jerry Maguire, but it has a great, has a lot of quotes, but one of the great quotes in it is "Show me the money." So I'm going to call this the "Show me the money" panel. We're talking about how to raise and leverage investments for the kinds of incredible models that you've been hearing about today. Typically when we hear thinking about investment or starting a business, we think of a traditional business loan, Wall Street enterprise, Wall Street comes to mind, venture capital and the like, but that is not the space that many of you occupy. You don't run traditional businesses, and there isn't always a place for you at your local bank to say, hey, I've got this great idea about standing up a business that is going to occupy a non-traditional space, non-traditional employees, non-traditional supply chain. But trust me, it'll all work out. Each of the folks here occupies some of the spaces that make up investment that aren't those traditional models. And I thought I could have you kind of introduce yourselves by telling us what part of the investment space for this independent grocery world you occupy. And so we can build out the universe of potential investment. So Kahfii, why don't we start with you?
I think so. Okay, great. Well, hi everyone. I'm Kahfii King. I don't know if it is on. Oh, cool.
Okay, I'm gonna hold it right up to you.
Okay. How's that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, hi everyone. I'm Kahfii King. I'm a program manager on the Equitable Food Systems team at Reinvestment Fund. We are a CDFI. We're a community development financial institution. I like to just call it a nonprofit lender. We're based in Philadelphia and have offices in Atlanta as well. So basically, Reinvestment Fund has a national scope, and what we do is we make mission-driven investments in underserved communities of all around the country, and we typically do that using capital, analytics, and partnerships in order to get that done. So we have a lending team, so they are in the investment space. But then we also have an analytics team or a policy team that helps to do research to help round out all the work that we're doing. And then what I like to say, I have the privilege of sitting in our programs department that actually focuses on grant making and technical assistance. The way that I see it, grant making and TA is really kind of the cherry on top to the larger capital stack that some of these independent grocers and alternative food retail projects are going after. And so it's really, really exciting to be able to sit in that department and be able to make the catalytic capital happen for folks, because it's not traditional. There aren't these strings attached necessarily with grants, and being able to also go after technical assistance to help build your capacity around the work that you're doing is critically important. So it's great to be able to be in the philanthropic space around financing. It can be really intimidating, and it's awesome to just be able to also make that an option for retailers who, being able to access traditional financing can be, like I said, intimidating. And being able to offer a grant that's a little bit more challenging, less intimidating, is great. So, all right, thank you, Lyneir.
I'm Lyneir Richardson. I'm the CEO of social enterprise called Chicago Trend, formed in 2014, really as a research assignment that was supported by the MacArthur Foundation. The research question was, how can commercial corridors impact neighborhoods and ultimately, create opportunities for local entrepreneurs. That work has morphed into, we now own 6 shopping centers. We have our 7th under contract. And one of the innovations of our work is that we have over 380 local investors who have also co-invested and own the shopping centers with us. The nature of our investment strategy has been largely initiated and supported by large philanthropy. The MacArthur Foundation, Cerner Foundation, Kresge Foundation, former U.S. Commerce Secretary Penny Pritzker's family foundation, have all invested in our $50 million fund that allows us to acquire shopping centers and ultimately renovate them and make them better places that will support the community. So our model includes the whole spectrum. When we acquire a shopping center, we typically require 20 to 30% of equity capital. 80% of that equity capital we invest from our fund, which are those large philanthropic organizations. 10 or 20% of the equity requirement typically comes from these community investors, and we make the case that if people have a little ownership stake, they'll patronize and protect shopping center in a different way. From that equity investment, we typically will go to a CDFI or a lender and borrow 70 or 80% of the capital. And then ultimately to execute the redevelopment, we have, a series of partnerships with local government and state government. Most recently, the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore invested about $10 million in the shopping center. And about a month ago, we announced a new grocery store. So we had enough capital to build a new grocery store in an old shopping center, as well as a partnership with an organization called Meals on Wheels to bring their new corporate headquarters and distribution and food preparation facilities to this old shopping center. So it's all of it. We look for patient, flexible, low-cost capital to enable, the innovation that we all want to see happen.
Great. Yeah, please.
Great. I guess I need to talk to you to some more additions that in local DC government really all. So appreciate that. I am Tariq Sharif. I work at the Deputy Mayor's Office of Planning and Economic Development. DEMED, it's a mouthful. We have lots of acronyms in government, especially local government in DC. And my role is with the business development strategy team, and all the work I do is within the food ecosystem space. And in DC, a lot of the funds we have are grant funds for businesses, and we operate those through a variety of forms. All grant, very low impact on applications as much as possible. And we work across our teams, within our real estate development teams, within local businesses, our other agencies, like Kahfii Planning, with our food policy team and director, Caroline Howe, who's here somewhere in the back, they just stepped out. Our folks at DC Health doing the work in that space, our local CDFIs, including Capital Impact Partners, which I know I see Allison Powers back there in the back, who manages one of our big funds, Nourish DC, which I'll get into a little bit more later. And we work across the board to not only attract but retain grocery stores and food businesses, especially those that we know exist in areas of low food access. I don't like food deserts. I don't even allowed to say food apartheid, but I'm going to say it anyway, and I'll get in trouble later. In those areas, and we know those are challenges. We focus a lot of efforts in those spaces, and do our very best to support businesses in the way they need the dollars they get, and utilize our federal partners here in DC, and pull down a ton of USDA funding, ARPA funds. And in the last, I think 5 years, we've put in somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 million into food businesses in DC through those funds.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. So it is a dynamic space available for investment. And throughout the day, we have heard from a lot of not just grocers, but food businesses that are just a wide range of solutions and structures designed to expand grocery store access. And just unbelievable creativity, because of course we've also been hearing what they're trying to do is respond to what the local community needs. But it's not, again, always a traditional model of a grocery store, and it's not always players who are traditional business leaders who have access to capital. And that can mean it's probably pretty tough to secure the financing. So, and I've also heard in talking to some of our guests today, it's not just about opening, it's about securing the new capital to make the changes that we heard about, delighting the customer. Those transformations were incredible, but they require financing. So I'm just curious, how do folks in the room make the case for investment? What are some of the most powerful cases you've heard or you've seen made that you think work? What are the elements of a strong case for resources? And well, Lyneir, why don't we start?
Yeah, I'm happy to start that again.
Yeah, you were ready to
Yeah,
jump.
yeah,
in.
the thing is, I remember when we owned two, soon to be three grocery anchored shopping centers that have a grocery. And I remember when we went to acquire our first shopping center in Baltimore, and the head of economic development said to us, so why is a company out of Chicago buying a shopping center in Baltimore? Why is that economic development? Why is that something we should support? And the case we made was it's not just a company out of Baltimore. There are 130 Black, local, small community investors who've invested in this. Charter school parents, church members. We did meetings for about 3 months in the apartment building, common areas, the public library, the churches. And so these are individuals who've invested on average $2,200 that have an ownership stake in a shopping center. And so these are residents and neighbors who invested with us because they want to earn a return, but more importantly, they want to see this asset in their neighborhood better. And so the nature of making the case about, the commercial property being your first impression of a neighborhood, that, if it's blighted or disinvested, it brings down property values, it attracts crime. All of those are part of the case making. As the presentations were made today, it's clearly, how something looks. Does it look like somebody owns it that cares about it, right? When do local people have a connection to ownership? We've heard food co-ops. What about the ownership of the asset, the overall shopping center, right? That is how we have made our case. And again, we've had city grant and subsidies, state grant and subsidies, new market tax credit, grant and subsidies, all around sort of local wealth creation and local investor participation.
Wow. I think I'm gonna jump in on that.
Yeah, definitely. I shouldn't turn it off.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, definitely jumping in here. And I think it's absolutely what you're saying here. And it's going to sound a little bit corny, but I'll take a step back just because one of the things that we do run at the investment fund and the program that I'm over is the Healthy Refinancing Initiative that Kyle actually mentioned earlier, which does provide grants, loans, and TA. Again, over the next several years. So it's really awesome to be able to provide like a reliable, consistent source of funding for folks who are looking for it. But in terms of making the case, it's going to sound corny, but in the philanthropy space, it really is about telling the story and telling us why you care about that community. With Healthy Refinancing, we do have a pretty long request for applications, but it's honestly your playbook to making your case for a healthy refinancing. You do a really good job of putting all of the things that we're looking for into that document so that you have exactly what you need to do and exactly what you need to put into that application to show how much you care about your community, how you're going to implement this business model, and really show the impact over time. So a little bit of technical knowledge around the application is thinking about your project management team, who's actually running the store, who's the retailer that you have involved, and talk about how long they've been in the industry. Talk about what their plans are to grow the business over time. You're also going to want to think about the technical assistance that you might need and how you're bringing in partners to help support that management team. Because you want to see that being a strength at the store level is that you have a really strong general manager or retailer and distributors, suppliers involved to bring the project from ground up to doors open. We also really like to see that there is stakeholder involvement. I think we heard that over the course of the day too. And again, it goes back to showing that you care and that part of the design of a project, a store, it starts with the people, it starts with the community. I think a lot of times we kind of see things happen and then things open and then nobody knows about it or they say that you didn't want this. And being able to bring people in and along that design process with you, even put them in leadership, help let them make some decisions is really important. So that's a huge piece of the application for each of the five. Obviously, you've got to talk about your food access goals. You want to see how you're bringing the food supply chain along with you? Are you going to focus in on locality? Are you going to work with local farmers and make sure that they have access to markets? So it really is about kind of tying all those different pieces together. And then, of course, if you want to see that you have a strong business model, we always say to do your homework before going into a community. If you're not from there, you need to make sure that you're doing your market study, doing a feasibility study to make sure that that model is actually going to come to fruition at the end of the day. There's so many different pieces, and we try to do our best to kind of outline some of those things in the application process and provide technical assistance for folks as they're going through it. So they're not alone as they're applying.
So I'm curious, I assume, but I wanted to ask, is Healthy Food Financing Initiative, do you have more demand for support than you have funds to provide?
That is correct.
Okay, so I think we're going to put that on Emily's policy list, that, right, when something is, when it's, what's the right word to say? When there's excessive demand of high quality applications, then that is a policy. That's a very clear place for Congress to consider putting money, or for local governments to be thinking about putting money. So let's talk about the role of government in supporting grocery and food retailers and food business. And we haven't talked about this today, but I think in some of the spaces that we are talking about, where there's a lack of access of food, just basically as a service, we don't think of food as a public good traditionally, but in those places, it actually kind of lines up with a utility, right? There is an actual absence of food, just like, and when there's an absence of electricity or water or broadband, governments use it's a pretty critical role in stepping in. And government doesn't control the marketplace here as it does with respect to those kinds of utilities. So let's talk about the different roles. And this is sort of basically what you do, that government can play. So how do we remake the market to make sure that we're offering in every community, right, access to affordable, nutritious, wonderful food?
Thank you for that question. Extremely difficult, and I could talk for about a few hours on this.
All right.
And we don't have time. I will say, I mean, to your point, I think food probably should be a public good or commodity. It's something that we all have every day and need, and which makes it so difficult to discuss. And it makes it so difficult to discuss and talk about it because everyone eats every day. Most people eat every day something, at least one meal, we hope. And it is everyone can cook or know how to cook or knows about food, and it makes it so hard and challenging to talk about it and discuss it in those terms, because everyone does in almost second nature. And so we have to really get people to think about and focus on that, policymakers alike. And so in DC, we've done a bunch of different things. I'm mentioning 3 programs and trying to talk too much about them. The first one, which I will ramble on for hours about, is Nourish DC Fund, which is modeled on Michigan's Good Food Fund. And that is a public-private partnership operated by Capital Impact Partners, which is the CDFI, who also got HFFI, I think $3 million. And it is a perfect line with the model we have there. And that is, we seeded that fund with some corporate dollars and local dollars, and their mandate is to go out and get philanthropic funding in order to match and exceed that amount. So I think to date, we've done about over 17 million, probably higher now. $1 million to local food businesses in DC from that fund. And I see some recipients here as well. Amanda Stevenson over there from Factory Market, which is a locally owned black woman owned business. We funded a second location through our Food Access Fund, which is all ARPA dollars, a different fund as well. That was $23.4 million to the local food business in DC. So already upwards of $40 million. And that is really focused on culture appropriate, culturally relevant, neighborhood staples from local producers and growers. And that's really important to us. Nourish DC, which I'll go on about again, is really focused on supporting BIPOC, we reframe that. Those in the vocal majority, let's go there.
Right.
Those populations and those entrepreneurs and businesses create wealth generation and businesses in the neighborhoods for the communities, by the communities, for themselves, right? And that's what's so important. And that fund offers through technical assistance, through low and interest loans, through grant making, through flexible financing and gap funding, and even business development and supports. We had a CPG cohort that just finished in, I want to say, August of this year, which was 11 businesses. We had, I think, 40 some applicants into that pool. And those are businesses in this area that are working in small and growing, and getting into grocery stores and getting into markets and providing high quality, good paying jobs, working on the larger infrastructure as well, and developing that space out. So we try to find ways to be innovative in that space. And then the last thing I'll mention is the more traditional path avoiding policy, which is the tax incentive. And so we've offered the supermarket tax incentive program, which is another one that I run, that focuses on abating real and personal property taxes and licensure fees for grocery stores operating in low food access areas. And so that is a 10-year abatement period. And I'm hoping to make some changes in the future to make it more accessible and longer term as a retention strategy for stores that are facing challenges as we look at inflation and security concerns and costs and all the other things that are happening that we know across the board.
Yeah, thanks. And I think we heard Mike talk about choices that Utica, as well as the state of New York, made, and some others made reference to that. So some of the funds you're talking about, Congress passed the funds, the DC as a city state made decisions about how to leverage them, and it sounds like in very intentional ways to try to improve the retail situation in DC.
Can I double click on one thing?
Yeah, I was just about to say, anything to add? So perfect. Okay.
So, yeah. Maybe there are two things. The need for capital to help operators succeed and stay open is absolutely critical. As many success stories with independent operators opening stores, they're always in the headline. People love the ribbon cutting. But there's a long list of sad stories of independent operators that they don't make it. You know, and the worst when they don't make it in 6 months or less than a year, 2 years. So in terms of advocacy, finding capital to help the entrepreneurs who are doing the hard work of operating is absolutely critical. Whether that is marketing dollars, like I already, as I was sitting out there when I think it was AJ on the panel mentioned, we have a partnership with our local businesses to buy from us. Right? There's a charter school right across the street. I'm like, even the charter school could buy water or pizzas from retailers in our shops. So that intentional work of helping the entrepreneurs stay open, marketing, reducing utility costs, even just operating something. I mean, I think that stuff has to be said out loud, right? And intentionality is overused word, but getting capital to keep the entrepreneurs operating because they open largely with passion, right? But passion without profit, you run out of passion if every day you're just sort of running. And I've seen this, right? You say all that passion, let's give them some profit so that they, maybe, whether it's marketing and telling the story or just, government support. So I want to make sure I should double click there.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So Kahfii, anything you want to double click on or add to in the sense of the kinds of things that government can do, either federally or locally, to make sure we're all aware of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll double click on
Double click on the
double click on one of your points. Is that the funding, the grant funding that is available through a program like Healthy Food Financing is exactly that. Like, yeah, it's everything from planning. Like you could be just starting out, trying to figure out all the different pieces that you need to pull together. HFI can help fund that. All the way through to implementation, which could be those hard costs for land, for building, for construction. But it's also too the soft costs of marketing needs. It could be training for your team or your staff, making sure that people are really set to be able to make those big decisions and carry a project through. So yeah, I totally agree that there's got to be funding, not just for the startup. It's got to be for all of the different pieces that make a business work, which could be leadership training, financials, being able to really see the problems before they happen and tackle those. So you can include that in a grant application, and it's something that we look forward to see strength for a project.
Oh, interesting. So just wondering, Kahfii, if we can stay with you, we have these great examples from DC and Chicago and Baltimore, but you also work with folks applying for support in rural areas. I'm wondering if you see the dimensions of the issues or the challenges or opportunities in rural spaces a little bit differently than in a more urban area. Anything you want to say as a funder, you appreciate that the extra challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely not a lack or difference in desire to want to fund in rural communities. If anything, with HFFI, we prioritize it. We build in priority points for projects that are operating in rural communities because it's underserved. And a lot of times we're seeing that retailers don't know how to access these funds. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that there's a few different ways to access HFI funding, as we kind of talked about. There's definitely investment at the local level, state level. The funding for healthy food financing or reinvestment fund is federal, so it can be intimidating to think like, oh my gosh, I'm applying for USDA funds. It's passing through us, so we're able to make it a little bit easier. But yeah, so funding projects in rural communities, I think we definitely appreciate seeing partnerships. And I know we've talked a lot about that today, but we tend to see that a bit more than we do for projects that happen in urban communities. Not that it doesn't happen, or people are operating in silos, but we tend to see that there's a larger focus on like supply chain resiliency as well. And that requires deep partnership. You want to be able to see that there's aggregation points and that there's opportunities for say your local farmer or that local producer to aggregate and not have to figure it out all by themselves. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely us looking to see what unique projects are coming out of those cases, how they're maximizing on partnerships and building the food supply chain through some of their ideas. Like we've definitely seen folks, because you know that like a traditional grocery store may not work in a rural setting just because of the logistics of it all. So we've seen really great projects that fund on mobile markets. People have done food lockers, again, the aggregation point, and really bringing the food to them, asking them to come to it.
Gotcha. What would you, well, I still have a minute or two. I want to see if any of the grocers or food businesses have a question. If you want to pop up, because you've got this incredible camel here. Otherwise, I'll go back to my questions, or a point you want to make. Yeah.
Hi.
Wow. So sorry.
It's on. All right, bet. All right, my name's Liz. I live in Chicago. I'm the owner of 40 Acres Fresh Market. Actually, HFFI, I was one of your 2019 grantees, so thanks a lot. I just wanted to say to anybody that is in here, apply for HFFI. That grant, it can be transformational, and the technical assistance, it funds a lot of the development work, and if you think you have enough money for development, you do not. You need more. So they funded like architecture. They'll fund things like, and we don't know if you guys still fund inventory, but like back in the 2019 round, y'all were funding like a whole bunch of stuff. So it's really quite amazing. So I just would encourage, if you are especially in that startup phase or you are making the move from either like mobile models into brick and mortar, HFFI is a really great funding source. And I will tell you this, money follows money. And so HFFI wound up unlocking over $1 million in funding for us from other sources, because if they see that the USDA will fund you, they're more likely to want to get in on that.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, and yes, one last, just for we have a grocer right back there.
Hi, I'm Kashi Segel from Rachaza in Atlanta. We're a B Corp. We work in local food, source from farmers. We also get the food waste that's on farm food waste and get that to people in our communities who need it. I'm curious, Lyneir, you talked about this crowdsourced community funding aspect, and I think it's a model that not enough people think about, including us. I come from the technology world, so we do a lot of crowdsourcing. How have you used that? Is that a venture model, or, you know, is it more like Kiva, where, what is it, where it's you crowdsource? How did you set that up?
Yeah, so we call it leveraging a fintech tool combined with old school community organizing. So we found a crowdfunding platform that allows us to to have an offering approved by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And through the Jobs Act, you know, anyone over the age of 18 can invest as little as $1,000. And so we placed the offering after it's been approved by the SEC on a public, you know, facing website. People can read all the information, see the financials, see the resumes, see the business strategy, and then ultimately click right there and make an investment. As you know, with crowdsourcing, there's sort of two models. There's one that's donation-based, and there's one that's investment-based. We focused on a wealth creation strategy where, again, people have invested with us because they want to earn a return just as much as they want to see the, you know, the community revitalized. So once it's on the public website, that's the, you know, that's the fintech tool. You can read everything and click and invest. And then old school community organizing, you know, in any offering, we've done 60+ meetings, Zoom calls, as I said, church basements, the public library, the apartment building common areas where we're telling people and they're getting an opportunity to see us and to connect with us as project sponsors, as, you know, commercial real estate owners. And so I believe that model of really using fintech plus community organizing and really talking about the opportunity that you can earn a return as this becomes successful, you know, is an opportunity more people should try.
Thank you. And it's another example of where I think we've heard throughout the day is wealth building strategy and like using the operation of what you do to help support broader wealth building is really incredible. All right, I am getting a little bit of the hook, but I'll just say I want, I guess, last thoughts, 1 or 2 words or 5 or less or something along those lines. What do we need more of? Because you know it works. So I'll start with you, Kahfii, and go down like I'll get to the last few words.
Sure. So I guess since operating in the philanthropic space, I would say longer term investment, like it's on the grant side of things, like a lot of times foundations, whatever, expect that quick impact, that quick success. And it's usually like, oh, your grant period is a year. You get go out here, so longer term investment.
And Kahfii talked about grant dollars as the cherry on top. We as the foundation is how, when they talk about capital, that first $100,000, $200,000, and particularly as it relates to technical assistance, you know, technical assistance without capital at the end is like workforce without job at the end. So we gotta have more grant capital early on in the process.
I'll double click on both things they said. And then I'll say sustained flexible funding to right size and maintain through whether it's rent or payroll, whatever it is, and that's not often happening in government. And the last thing I'll say is call me. If I don't know you need help or want to locate a business in DC, I cannot help you. So reach out, talk to your government, find the dollars, find the right people, and we will work to help you get where you need to be and get real food.
Wow. Well, I hope everyone has a local government leader like you in their hometown. I'm glad that you're in my hometown. So thank you, everybody. Really, really appreciate it.